Hello, I'm your host, Effie Pilarino, and today we have another exciting topic, of course, linked to AI. I have a special guest from Infobeep, Dave Boddington. Dave, first of all, let me welcome you briefly.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, you are a digital marketer at heart. And this experience that you have is gold, as we are deeply in the experience economy. And now we are trying to see how to move to more an intelligent economy that includes experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I started working in mobile back in 2004, 2005. And I think even then it was clear the kind of the strength of mobile as a medium, as a channel, as a means of connecting not just consumer to consumer, absolutely that's the case, but also consumers to brands. And we only see that now, right? We used to talk about leaving your house with your keys, your wallet, and your phone. Now you leave your house with just your phone. So I think maybe that's maybe the biggest indication of what the how important the mobile device and the communication that brings is to consumers and well individuals I should say, not consumers.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm one of those people that really literally walk out just with my phone.
Yeah.
And my only worry is the battery, right?
Phone and battery pack.
100%. So let's dive into, we have rich communication, and especially in the industry that I'm focused in, financial services,
Sure.
whose lines are blurring with in e-commerce, in where we're embedding in all types of businesses. But
Absolutely.
let's start by looking a bit at how AI capabilities are changing RCS as it transitions from a one-way to a two-way communication.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all part of a bigger picture, a kind of a larger paradigm shift, a paradigm evolution maybe of communications, of consumer behavior, as well as brand behavior and capabilities as well. So we know that consumer and brand interactions are increasingly moving online from physical into digital experiences, and that's what consumers in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases want. And it's increasingly what they expect. And we do know that consumer expectations are often exceed brands' capabilities. But we know that's the direction of travel and has been for a long time and will only continue. RCS and AI can only support that. RCS brings richer, richer messaging, richer capabilities right to the consumer's default inbox. So it has a number of benefits that support that evolution. And AI can only then add a number of additional layers to that, bring in really strong kind of capabilities and enhancing the communication. So effectively, they work hand in glove, right? AI brings the intelligence, the clues in the name, it brings the intelligence, the capabilities, and RCS brings the channel over which that intelligence can be expressed, I think. And it kind of, for me, it falls fundamentally into two kind of areas. Firstly is maybe the external, so how AI can support that transition to the digital interactions and digital messaging, moving from kind of static, you know,
One,
by static communications, reactive, proactive, interactions into kind of more dynamic, but also then the internal, how it can actually help businesses evolve their own capabilities and evolve their own solutions, join up elements of their business to provide more unified and quicker route to market for a lot of their solutions.
interesting. I'm hearing from you again, augmentation. So AI augmenting, what the RCS capabilities are and how they can be used, whether it's a B2C or a B2B brand. Can you share with us some specific examples of, this type of collaboration between RCS and AI and, the customer experience?
Yeah, exactly that. I can. I've picked out one example which I think is worth sharing, which is kind of picks up both of those elements I talked about, the internal and the external, and yeah, augmentation. I'd almost kind of refer to it as superpowering. I think is it's more than just a layer. It's really kind of boosting a lot of those capabilities. So that example I kind of reference was, so we work with Claro Sports. So they're one of the largest telecom players in Latin America, and they provide live sports coverage also. And they have exclusive rights for many major events, but including the Olympics. So with the 2024 Olympics, we developed a full conversation experience for them for their Olympic coverage via mobile and via RCS. So this was including real-time information, statistics, media content to be shared via the RCS channel. So using our AI hub, firstly, we aggregated that vast set of information and data and content that already existed, but also then used the AI hub to aggregate the additional real-time information and curate that in a form that could be readily shared with consumers, both via kind of outbound messaging, so from the A to P, pushing content out to the users who subscribed and opted into such, but also then once that interaction, that conversation has started, by reacting then to consumers' requests for additional information. So it was understanding what the consumers are asking for. Can you tell me about this result? What happened here? And then returning that in the right way. So it really, I say, ticked both of those boxes in terms of that consolidation of a large data set and presenting it in the right way for consumers in a really engaging way, but also really helping with the go-to-market and delivering the solution internally. So, we took that solution to market in only 10 working days, which is something that, from my experience, building those kind of solutions for a brand such as that, typically that's months in the planning and certainly many weeks in the execution. So the time to market was drastically reduced and it was really effective. So we saw an average 12 messages per conversation, which really shows the kind of engagement that individuals were having with the content and with the brand and with the event. And also had over 2,500 new subscribers. So it really ticked kind of the consumer box as well as business box as well, for sure. So we're really pleased with that. We're really proud of that execution.
I can imagine, and this seems to me a major evolution of conversational interfaces,
Absolutely.
and I can imagine that this is sort of the prelude to whatever world and whenever it comes with AI agents and other interfaces, we're really, this is a natural evolution or
Absolutely.
progression towards that direction. That's how it feels.
Absolutely.
In some of the discussions we had before organizing this call, Dave, you mentioned something that really sort of piqued my interest. You were making this distinction between personalization that we talk a lot about in messaging and humanized messages or
Yeah.
humanization. And this, of course, is very relevant in this AI era. Can you tell us a little bit what you mean and what that looks like in practice, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting space in general. As you say, personalization is not new. We've talked about that for many years. And at its simplest, it's putting someone's name at the start of a message, and evolving into kind of adapting the content based on their preferences and the like, and so some learning there. But realistically, and in many cases, right, we're still expecting the consumer to kind of adjust to the technical interface they're dealing with. Humanization works the other way around. It's really about ensuring and allowing a consumer to interact in the way they would typically do so. And we'll touch on it a little bit later, maybe. But if you think about kind of the retail environment, you're used to, historically, people walk into a store, they speak to a shopkeeper, and they explain what they want in sentences in human terms,
Yeah.
and the response will come back likewise. We've kind of been slowly conditioned to speaking with machines in 2, 3 word sentences, to adapting our input to Google search to make sure to get the best results and thinking about the keywords. Well, actually, humanization does away with that. It's about allowing consumers to articulate, provide input in the way they would typically, and actually in very rich forms. Importantly, understanding that. It's about recognizing what consumers say, what they mean, what they want, interpreting that, analyzing that against the relevant kind of the relevant use case and that, but then importantly, providing the right kind of response as well. So providing that kind of human kind of response, whether that be the right tone of voice, reassuring, personal, but also speaking with the brand point of view as well. So it's moving those interactions into a more human-like interaction. What's careful is we need to kind of avoid that uncanny valley where it's kind of human but kind of not, and actually becomes actually a real turnoff for individuals and consumers. But that's really, as I see where that direction of travel is again, moving into kind of the humanization of experiences about, yeah, becoming more how us consumers, us individuals, us humans want to interact. And actually starts to then also move beyond that, moving into kind of the kind of predicting what individuals will want, inferring what they mean
Infer. Yeah.
from what they're saying, and really starting to anticipate and understand the needs without additional effort from the users, without asking, do you mean this or what about that? Really understanding what consumers want and what they need, and acting and taking next best action on that basis.
So this really requires integrating the advancements of these technologies,
Absolutely,
especially the Gen AI technologies that are
absolutely.
really mastering, as you said, the natural language. And, in my mind, it's always easier to think of what were discussing in the context of commerce, because we are all shoppers, whether we are heavy online shoppers or less heavy, but we can all understand that. And I'm always thinking of this huge trend of embedded finance in our sector, where you have financial services where the customer is, examples like Shopify, that earns over 70% of their revenues from financial services, and there's other marketplaces that are such examples. And there it matters how you
Sure.
communicate and bring the prospect or the candidate along the journey to the final decision of purchasing. And I want to understand from you how all these businesses are really helping themselves with RCS and AI in these customer journeys.
No, it's really interesting, and as you say, you made a kind of really interesting statement there about putting the product, putting the decision making where the consumers are, and I think across the board, whether we're talking about AI, whether we're talking about RCS, ultimately the objective really needs to be about driving efficiency and optimization, optimizing the process, and again that's from a business perspective, but also from a consumer perspective. Those two are inextricably linked, right? And I also think about kind of retail. I kind of touched on it earlier. If you think about where retail was, 30 years ago in store, it was the ultimate in dare I say, humanized experience, a personal experience. You would be talking to an individual one to one. You would be browsing a store. You would ask what you want. That would point you in the right direction to the right aisle to the right product. We've kind of shifted now into a web-based experience, and that has some real benefits. If you think about the breadth of choice you can expose online, you think about the means of navigation, the canvas you have in a web retail environment is very broad with search and navigation tools that the web brings. But you maybe lose that personal, that kind of human element. If you think about then what that, as we move into a more conversational experience, it actually has some real benefits, but it also has some real challenges. You don't have, for example, in web, you don't have that canvas. You don't have that non-linear navigation. You don't have that ability to jump from men's shoes over to women's accessories with 2 clicks in the same way. So it can be quite, a clunky experience. And that's really then where AI comes in, because it does allow you to then have that kind of that personal humanized experience that give you the breadth of choice and exploration within a kind of a mobile messaging environment. So it really does allow businesses to combine both worlds. Of course, it's a challenge implementing that. It's how to layer those kind of tools and those capabilities on top of the products you already have, the tools you already have, that you're already using. I think that's where most of the challenges will probably come over the course of the next kind of few years, is how we start to kind of layer on that implementation. But really, it's about, I think, putting the the ability to transact, the ability to explore and ultimately to purchase in the hands of the consumers. So really having that kind of unified experience for them.
But I'm hearing from you that the capabilities of RCS and AI could effectively even change how we navigate or how we interact with the online purchasing journey from search to customization to how we pay all these. It's kind of again here like a two-way thing that is affecting how the designs on the web are and how the journeys are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we already saw that again, harking back to kind of maybe my early days in mobile and digital were two different things. They were totally different environments. Going back to the WAP and iMode days of mobile web. And there was always this perception that eventually mobile would be consumed into web, or as it was in those days. But it's actually worked the other way around, right? Essentially, digital has been consumed into mobile. That's where individuals are. And so there absolutely will be the need to layer on those kind of capabilities that are kind of really native and existing within web. You touched on some of those kind of really interesting points, such as payments and the like, and how we integrate elements of, say, of payment, those kind of e-commerce elements into the messaging environment. And I think that's going to be an interesting space, particularly over the next kind of few years. There's some really interesting kind of movers in that space, whether it be third-party products and solution providers, or kind of more native integration into things such as Apple Pay and Google Wallet. But I think, that's really then where AI allows you to join those dots. It allows you to
Mhm.
a business to kind of unify multiple touch points, a consumer's experience online, a consumer's experience in store, a consumer's experience with your customer support and your complaints team, unifying that into an experience that really ensures that what you're presenting to that consumer via a rich media channel such as RCS is as effective and as joined up as possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned Apple and their recent adoption of RCS
Sure.
is a major development, if you want. And any thoughts around how that will also shape how we're heading or where we're heading with RCS and AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it wouldn't be underplaying to say it's catalytic. It really is for the channel. I think having worked in RCS for a while now, one of the biggest challenges, the biggest hurdles to overcome in terms of kind of really moving the channel forward was reach and adoption. Because if you are only able to address effectively 50% of your audience of Android and not iOS, it becomes a real barrier. Because as a business, where do you invest? You invest in the area that gives you the biggest bang for your buck. If you're already excluding potentially half your audience, and potentially in some cases more, depending on your demographic, that's a real challenge. So I think Apple coming on board and adopting RCS is hugely significant for the channel, because of the reach it will eventually give us. We see it, the iOS adoption and enablement for carriers rolling out in certain markets. The best example I would probably bring is actually Germany, where and Germany is a really nice mature RCS market. The carriers themselves, strong proponents of the channel, work really well collaboratively, and all three of the main carriers do support iOS. They see now that RCS has a reach of in excess of 53 unique users, with 75% penetration in market. So that's far more addressable users than WhatsApp, which would be the main kind of rich channel competitor, certainly in that market. So really it then means that in time, and there'll be certain markets where this is the case now, such as Germany, but in time, as RCS rolls out, as iOS adoption RCS rolls out with the telcos across markets, the channel will become second only to SMS in terms of addressable users. So it will be the preeminent channel and the foremost rich channel, allowing you to have that kind of consistent, rich experience across iOS and Android devices. So really hitting all of your key audience. So it's just going to be a catalyst for further channel adoption. It supports business case for why would a business invest in the channel? Because your audience are there. Why would a business adopt, consider adapting internal processes, internal tools? Because your audience are there. So it really does enable that. It becomes kind of quite turnkey from my perspective. And if my inbox is anything to go by, that's what it's been since what, November, a year and a bit ago, since that announcement. The growth is only going to continue.
Yeah, and I like to connect it with the perspective in financial services where Apple is a very strong player
Sure.
in all sorts of ways, with Apple Pay and Wallet
Absolutely.
and we have open banking in the UK now with Apple. There's so much that I can see unfolding over the next, couple of months and years that can happen through this, the network effects that can be unlocked, really.
Absolutely, and I think there's so many, as you say, there's so many areas that kind of can key into the say that kind of paradigm evolution, that paradigm shift that we're seeing, whether it be and I think what's important is the role of the GSMA in this. So one of the points that I really noted with and Apple's very initial announcement was that they were supporting the GSMA RCS specification. So it really does underline the importance of those single global standards for the channel. And the fact that those channels are defined, yes, by GSMA, but with the support of Google, Apple, telcos, and key players such as Infobit, does mean that there's going to be a very strong standards-driven channel, which then, as you layer on things such as carrier network APIs, open payment gateway APIs, etc., doing that within and on top of a really consistent and well-defined framework means you have then universality. It means you're not dealing with a different payment provider in one market as you are in another, which we are already seeing in across other channels. That's one of the challenges that needs to be addressed. So that kind of universality of solution again really does help to remove the friction for channel growth and channel adoption, both by consumers, but really importantly by brands and businesses.
Brands, yeah, you bring this point is extremely important because it is the way that interoperability works and
Absolutely.
standards are those really that unlock network effects, and we know that in all sorts of technological development cycles, that is a truth. Dave, last question. I want to pick your mind on what are the key developments in AI that will really have big impact in the space of RCS, especially for business messaging over the next couple of years, as much as you can think of.
Yeah, for sure. And I think again, it's a really interesting space. And as with any such kind of technological advancement, you'll see those that are kind of bleeding edge, that are really pushing forwards, those early adopters, and in many cases those startups that are jumping on into that space. But of course, the medium and the long tail of adoption will take time. Of course, it was as with many things. But I think where we see there being some interesting kind of evolutions in the coming years. I think one thing I can't remember where I saw, I think it was an internal presentation that was shared, was that movement from software as a service into service as a software, which I think is a really interesting kind of positioning for where AI can then start to bring increasingly autonomous capabilities to processes to develop, whether that be developing scripts, generating content, but internal processes as well, as I touched on earlier, to increase and improve the efficiency within businesses operations as well as communications. And that's where it becomes really important from kind of an RCS and business messaging perspective. And looking into the kind of the wave of agentive AI. So moving kind of capabilities away from just responding and kind of, as I've touched on earlier, in terms of reacting to consumers' needs, but starting to actually firstly predict those, but actually taking that one step further, autonomously making decisions, handling tasks. So I want to book a holiday to let's say let's say the Seychelles. Why not? Let's go to the Seychelles next
Oh,
summer.
come on, Dave. Come to
Why
Greece
not?
for vacations. Forget about the Seychelles.
I was in Greece last year. Very much enjoyed it. It was fantastic.
Okay.
But let's say my wife wants a beach with the sun and for a change somewhere there. So I want to book a holiday in the Seychelles. The agentive AI knows who I am, knows what my family preferences are, like knows what my previous holidays have been like, and not just doesn't just present options to me, but actually knows what I want, knows what my family wants, makes the bookings, books the travel, starts to look at what I need to do in terms of insurance, in terms of connections, and it makes those decisions on my behalf. Now, that's a significant step from where we are now, but I think that's really the direction of travel. And of course, that's a kind of a quite frivolous experience. But if you think about putting that into a business operations context or a business consumer interactions context where maybe a consumer has made a complaint, and can that AI not just respond to that complaint, but resolve it autonomously? That becomes really quite powerful.
Yeah, and as you said, that's the direction of travel. Nobody knows the timing of this, but we are going in that direction. And the if you want, I'm always thinking of how most innovations are all about how you combine different elements of
Yeah,
technology
for sure.
and create something new that was either uneconomically possible, it wasn't possible from the economics before, or time, or just technologically. And now we are in a very different era where I would say, RCS and AI are really helping us see how we can transition in this rich agentic world, if you want.
Exactly that. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And as you say, I think I like to think of, neither AI nor RCS are solutions of themselves, right? RCS is a channel, it's a conduit in that sense. AI is a tool, but that tool has to be applied to a material or a product. But what they do is, as I mentioned earlier, they supercharge them. They give them superpowers. They allow them to express a business's capabilities, a business objectives to its fullest at the moment. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's gonna be really interesting and exciting few years to come. That's for sure.
And of course, watching how businesses that are using these tools and continue to use the evolution of these tools, how they are going to unlock this new value for their businesses, whatever business they are, because all these are auxiliary tools, right?
Yeah,
They're not the main strategy. But they can enable new business models, new revenues, new ways of working, designing, making decisions. So
absolutely.
on that note, it's a very exciting time to be in this space, to watch whether it is thinking how we are shifting from mobile to this AI world,
Yeah,
or thinking about how our communications in within a business and with the customers are changing by the way that we implement all these technologies.
yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you very much, Dave, for your wonderful insights and enriching ways of looking at the evolution that we are in. It's always difficult to see, the bigger picture and also the possibilities as we are all dwelling in these developments.
Yeah, too right. It's been an absolute pleasure, Effie. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It's been real fun.